Detective Lisa Morrison had seen her share of cold cases, but the file that landed on her desk that Monday morning was different. It wasn't cold, it was frozen solid, buried under 23 years of bureaucratic indifference and deliberate obstruction. The tab read, Emily Hartwell, missing person, 2002. Lisa opened the folder and found herself staring at the photograph of a bright-eyed college student, 19 years old, with auburn hair and a smile that suggested she believed the world was full of possibilities. Emily had disappeared from Riverside College during her sophomore year, last seen leaving the campus library on a rainy October evening. The original investigation had concluded that Emily was a runaway. The lead detective at the time, Frank Garrison, had written in his report, subject had failing grades, troubled relationship with parents, history of depression. Likely left voluntarily to start new life elsewhere. No evidence of foul play. Case closed after 6 months. No body, no leads, no justice. But now, 23 years later, Emily's younger sister Claire had filed a formal request to reopen the case. Claire had been just 8 years old when her sister vanished. Now she was a lawyer with resources, determination, and new evidence that suggested Emily's disappearance hadn't been voluntary at all. Lisa called Claire that afternoon. They met at a coffee shop downtown, a neutral space where Claire could speak freely. Detective Morrison, thank you for seeing me, Claire said, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. I know this case is old. I know most people think my sister just ran away. But I've never believed that, and now I have proof they were wrong. Tell me everything, Lisa said. Claire pulled out a worn notebook. 3 months ago, I was going through my mother's belongings after she passed. I found Emily's diary. The police never looked for it, never asked if it existed. My mother had hidden it away, couldn't bear to read it after Emily disappeared. She slid the notebook across the table. Lisa opened it carefully, seeing Emily's handwriting fill the pages, hopes, dreams, fears, and secrets. Read the last few entries, Claire said quietly, the ones from the week before she vanished. Lisa read, October 15, 2002. Professor Caldwell asked me to stay after class again today. He said he wants to discuss my potential, but the way he looks at me makes my skin crawl. I told him I wasn't interested in private tutoring sessions. He didn't like that. October 18, 2002. Caldwell cornered me in the library today. He said I was making a mistake by rejecting his mentorship. Said my grades would suffer. When I tried to walk away, he grabbed my arm. I'm scared. But who would believe me? He's the golden boy of the English department, and I'm just a struggling student. October 21, 2002. I went to Dean Richardson about Caldwell. She listened, but I could tell she didn't believe me. She said I was misinterpreting professional concern and that I should be grateful for the attention of such a distinguished professor. I feel so alone. October 23, 2002. Caldwell followed me to my dorm tonight. Stood outside for 20 minutes, just watching my window. I'm terrified. I'm going to the police tomorrow. I don't care if no one believes me. I have to do something. That was the last entry. Emily had disappeared the next day. Lisa looked up at Claire, her mind already racing. Why wasn't this diary part of the original investigation? Because Detective Garrison never looked for it. He decided Emily was a runaway within days and stopped investigating. When my parents tried to tell him Emily wouldn't just leave, that something was wrong, he dismissed them, said they were in denial. Do you know what happened to Professor Caldwell?
Lisa asked.
Claire's expression hardened. He's now Dr. Thomas Caldwell, president of Riverside College, one of the most respected educators in the state. He's been there for 35 years, climbed the ranks steadily. He's untouchable. No one's untouchable, Lisa said. Not when there's evidence. The next day, Lisa drove to Riverside College. The campus had changed significantly in 23 years. New buildings, updated landscaping, modern technology everywhere. But the library where Emily was last seen still stood, a Gothic revival structure that now seemed ominous. Lisa's first stop was the administration building, where she requested to speak with Dr. Caldwell. His secretary, a woman in her 60s with a protective demeanor, informed her that the president was very busy and didn't take unscheduled meetings. Lisa showed her badge. "Tell Dr. Caldwell that Detective Morrison is here regarding Emily Hartwell. He'll want to see me." 5 minutes later, Lisa was ushered into a spacious office overlooking the quad. Thomas Caldwell rose from behind his desk, a tall man in his late 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of refined appearance that commanded respect. "Detective Morrison," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "I must admit, hearing Emily Hartwell's name after all these years was quite surprising. How can I help you?" Lisa sat without being invited. "I'm reopening the investigation into her disappearance. I understand you were her English professor." "I taught hundreds of students," Caldwell said smoothly. "But yes, I do remember Emily. Tragic situation. Bright girl, but troubled. I wasn't surprised when I heard she'd run away." "Interesting that you remember her so well after 23 years," Lisa observed. Caldwell's smile didn't waver. "A student disappearing tends to leave an impression. Is there a reason you're revisiting this? Has new evidence come to light?" "We've obtained Emily's personal diary. It describes several uncomfortable encounters with you in the weeks before her disappearance. It describes harassment, intimidation, and stalking." For just a moment, something cold flickered in Caldwell's eyes. Then the warm, professional mask returned. "Detective, I think you're misinterpreting the confused writings of a troubled young woman. Emily struggled academically and emotionally. She sometimes misread normal professional interactions as something inappropriate. It's unfortunate, but not uncommon with students who are dealing with mental health issues." "She reported you to the dean?" "Yes, and Dean Richardson investigated and found no merit to the accusations. It was a misunderstanding, nothing more." "Where were you the night Emily disappeared?" "Detective, that was 23 years ago. I can't possibly remember my whereabouts on a specific night from decades past." "Try," Lisa said flatly. Caldwell's expression hardened slightly. "I believe I was at home with my wife, as I was most evenings. Now, if you're quite finished, I have meetings to attend." "One more thing," Lisa said, standing. "Do you still have access to your office from 2002? The one in the English building?" "That building was renovated 15 years ago. My old office is now a storage room, I believe." "Why?" "Just curious," Lisa said. "I'll be in touch." As Lisa left campus, she called her partner, Detective Ray Chin, who'd been working the case from the office side. "Ray, I need everything on Thomas Caldwell. Financial records, property records, employment history, everything. And I need to know if there were any other complaints against him during his teaching years, officially reported or not." "On it," Ray replied. "But Lisa, you need to hear something." I pulled the original case file and started tracking down people who were involved. Detective Frank Garrison, the original lead investigator, he died 8 years ago. But his partner on the case, Officer Mike Donovan, is retired and living in Florida. I called him. And he's been waiting 23 years for someone to reopen this case. He said Garrison shut down the investigation deliberately, refused to pursue obvious leads, and threatened him when he tried to push back. Donovan says Garrison was being paid off, though he could never prove it. Lisa's grip tightened on her phone. Garrison buried this case intentionally? Why? Donovan doesn't know for sure, but he has suspicions. He's flying in tomorrow to talk to us in person. He says there's more to this than just Caldwell. That evening, Lisa returned to the police station and began pulling apart the original investigation file. What she found was a masterclass in sabotage. Garrison had failed to interview obvious witnesses, ignored Emily's roommate's statement that Emily's belongings were still in the dorm, never requested phone records, never searched faculty offices. Concluded the case was a runaway situation within 72 hours, actively discouraged Emily's parents from pursuing their own investigation. It wasn't incompetence. It was a cover-up. The next day, Mike Donovan arrived, a gray-haired man in his 70s with sharp eyes and a bearing that suggested he'd been a good cop who'd never forgotten his failures. Emily Hartwell, he said without preamble as he sat across from Lisa and Ray. I've thought about her almost every day for 23 years. I knew something was wrong. I knew Garrison was dirty. But I was young, scared for my job, and I didn't push hard enough. Tell us everything, Lisa said. The night Emily disappeared, there were two witnesses who saw her leaving the library. Both said they saw her walking toward the faculty parking lot, which was odd because her dorm was in the opposite direction. I tried to follow up, but Garrison shut me down. Said the witnesses were unreliable. Why would she go to the faculty lot? Ray asked. One witness, a campus security guard named Martin Torres, said he saw Emily talking to someone in a dark sedan. He didn't see who, but the car was a BMW, dark blue. Torres told me this directly, but when Garrison interviewed him, suddenly Torres claimed he wasn't sure what he saw and might have been mistaken. I went back to Torres privately, and he admitted Garrison had threatened him. Said if Torres caused trouble for faculty members with false accusations, he'd lose his job. Did you ever find out whose BMW it was?
Lisa asked.
Garrison refused to pull campus parking records. But I did some digging on my own time. Thomas Caldwell drove a dark blue BMW. I tried to tell Garrison, and that's when he called me into his office and made it very clear that if I pursued this any further, my career was over. He said the college had powerful friends, and I was just a uniformed officer who should know his place. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest. Garrison was protecting Caldwell. Worse than that, Donovan said. About a month after the case was closed, Garrison suddenly paid off his mortgage, a house he'd been financing for 10 years, paid in full. He also bought a new truck and took his family on a European vacation. A beat cop's salary doesn't cover that kind of spending. The next day, Mike Donovan arrived, a gray-haired man in his 70s with sharp eyes and a bearing that suggested he'd been a good cop who'd never forgotten his failures. Emily Hartwell, he said without preamble as he sat across from Lisa and Ray. I've thought about her almost every day for 23 years. I knew something was wrong. I knew Garrison was dirty. But I was young, scared for my job, and I didn't push hard enough. The college paid him off, Ray said. Or Caldwell did personally, Donovan replied. Garrison died wealthy, living in $1 million home he supposedly bought with smart investments. The whole thing stinks, and I've been waiting for someone to care enough to dig into it. Lisa stood, her resolve crystallizing. We're going to need that campus security guard. Martin Torres. Is he still alive? Alive and still carrying guilt, Donovan said. I tracked him down before I flew out. He's willing to talk now. Says he doesn't care about the consequences anymore. He's dying of cancer and wants to clear his conscience. 3 days later, Lisa interviewed Martin Torres in his hospital room. The man was gaunt, oxygen tubes in his nose, but his memory was crystal clear.
I saw her, he said.
October 24, 2002, about 9:47 p.m. I logged it in my security report because it seemed off, a student heading away from the dorms toward faculty parking. Then I saw Professor Caldwell's car pull up. She walked over to it and they talked. She looked upset. Then she got in the car. She got in voluntarily? Lisa asked. She got in, but I wouldn't say voluntarily. It looked like she didn't have a choice. Like he was pressuring her. I watched them drive off campus. That was the last time anyone saw Emily Hartwell. Why didn't you report this? Ray asked, though his tone was gentle. Torres's eyes filled with tears. I did report it. I put it in my security log and told the investigating detective, Garrison. He told me I was mistaken, that I'd seen some other student, some other car. When I insisted, he got aggressive. Told me that Caldwell was an important man, and if I spread lies about him, I'd be fired and blacklisted from ever working security again. I had a family to feed. I was a coward, and that girl paid for it. You're not a coward, Lisa said. You are threatened and intimidated by people with power. But you can help Emily now. We need your testimony. Armed with Torres's statement, Emily's diary, and evidence of Garrison's suspicious finances, Lisa and Ray obtained a search warrant for Caldwell's properties. He owned 3. His primary residence, a lakeside cabin purchased shortly after Emily's disappearance, and a storage unit he'd maintained for decades. They started with the cabin. It was isolated, surrounded by woods, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. The property was well maintained, clearly used regularly. Inside, Lisa and her team of forensic specialists began their search. It was in the basement that they found it. The room had been renovated, new concrete floor poured, but forensic analysis showed disturbances in one section. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed something was buried beneath. 2 days later, excavation began. 10 feet down, they found human remains. The DNA testing took 3 weeks, but Lisa already knew the truth. When the official confirmation came, she felt both triumph and crushing sadness. The remains were Emily Hartwell's. The forensic anthropologist's report painted a grim picture. Emily had died from blunt force trauma to the skull, consistent with being struck multiple times with a heavy object. She'd been buried carefully, deliberately, by someone who'd hoped she'd never be found. Lisa arrested Thomas Caldwell on a Thursday morning. He maintained his innocence, his lawyers immediately swarming with motions and objections. But the evidence was overwhelming. The trial began 10 months later. The prosecution presented a devastating case. Emily's diary detailing Caldwell's harassment. Martin Torres's testimony about seeing Emily get into Caldwell's car. Forensic evidence connecting the remains to Caldwell's property. Financial records showing suspicious payments from Caldwell to Garrison. Testimony from 3 other women who came forward after Caldwell's arrest, describing similar harassment from him decades ago. The judge sentenced Caldwell to life in prison without possibility of parole. Lisa sat with Claire Hartwell after the sentencing. Claire was crying, but there was relief in her tears. We found her, Claire said. After all these years, we finally found her and brought her home. Your sister was brave, Lisa said. She tried to do the right thing, tried to report what was happening to her. The system failed her, but she didn't die in vain. The women who came forward after Caldwell's arrest, they said they'd been afraid to speak up because they'd heard what happened to Emily, how the college protected Caldwell and dismissed her claims. Now they know they'll be believed. Claire nodded. What happens to Detective Garrison's estate? He profited from my sister's murder. The DA is working on that. His family may face civil action. The college is also facing multiple lawsuits for their role in covering up Caldwell's crimes. 6 months later, Lisa attended Emily Hartwell's funeral. She'd finally come home, her remains returned to her family for proper burial. Hundreds attended, friends, family, classmates who'd never forgotten her, and strangers who'd been moved by her story. Claire gave the eulogy. My sister Emily was 19 years old when she was murdered. She was bright, kind, and brave. When she faced harassment, she spoke up. When she was threatened, she didn't back down. She did everything right, everything we tell people to do. And she was punished for it by a system that valued a powerful man's reputation over her safety and her life. But Emily's story doesn't end with her murder. It ends with justice. It ends with Detective Lisa Morrison refusing to accept easy answers. It ends with Martin Torres finding the courage to finally tell the truth. It ends with other victims finding their voices. It ends with a corrupt system being exposed and torn down. Emily's death mattered. Her life mattered. And the fight she started 23 years ago, the fight to hold powerful men accountable, to believe women when they speak up, to value truth over reputation, that fight continues. Lisa stood at Emily's grave after the service ended, alone with her thoughts. She thought about all the cold cases in the archives, all the victims whose stories had been buried by corruption, indifference, or incompetence. Justice delayed was justice denied, but it was still justice. And as long as there were people willing to fight for truth, the buried stories would eventually surface. Emily Hartwell had been silent for 23 years, her voice stolen by violence and corruption. But in the end, she'd spoken loudly enough to bring down a murderer and expose a system that had protected him. The vanishing evidence had reappeared. The silenced witness had testified. And justice, though long delayed, had finally arrived. Detective Lisa Morrison walked away from the grave, her commitment renewed. There were more cold cases waiting, more silenced voices that needed to be heard. She would listen to every one of them.